Okay, so beach and reading. Thank you, Robin. If you want to share your favorite summer activity in the chat while we get rolling, there's a couple more people coming in. If any of you have any reading suggestions, I would love those. Just because all I've been reading is work stuff, and sometimes you need to take a break from the work stuff and read something that's just entertaining. Pool and gardening, I love it. In person, for sure. Okay, thank you, Kate. I will make a note of those. Camping at the beach, that's awesome. I this year decided to schedule a vacation to Yosemite in November, so I am looking forward to some version of camping in November around Veterans Day. So like how Veterans Day is on that Thursday, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take that Friday off and I'm gonna go. So I'm excited to do that this year as something different for me, since last year I did a lot of at home. So let me go ahead. I'm going to open some things up here. Welcome. My name is Brittany Conrad. I am an EdTech TSA for Corona Norco Unified. I have been in my position there for about not a year. If I don't count last year, which was the busiest year I had, for about 2.5 years now. And it has been one of the coolest experiences for me as a teacher. And prior to that, I was a resource teacher. So I taught resource math at Norco High School. And the accessibility pieces for me were always a really big blaring thing when it comes to the fact that a lot of our districts are now one-to-one. There's some really cool tools within the Google verse that we can use to help our students. So I'm going to be going over a couple of those things, but before we dive into that, I want to show you or give you an idea of where all of the resources that I have will be posted. This is the website, and I will go ahead and copy and paste this into the chat. You don't need to remember if you want to remember a bit.ly, that's the one you'll want to remember. I did 2 sessions for Google Camp, and they're both on there. So if you wanted to look at anything else that I had done, you're more than welcome to. It just makes it easier for me to give out a ton of information. Rather than just slides after slides after slides. I'm sure you all have amassed a number of slide decks at this point from such a great conference. So I didn't change it to this afternoon, but I do want to check in with you all since we are the last session of the day. How are you doing this afternoon? This Kermit speaks to me. I don't know why. I love D. So if anybody else is feeling like D, maybe we're feeling C because the conference is almost over. Maybe it's F because then we get to go do fun things with our families. So I just wanted to check in and see where everybody was at. Yep. Excellent. At least we don't have any no E's, hopefully. I'll help out with that. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have along the way. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them into the chat at any point in time. I keep my chat box open so I can address them as they come up. And from there, we're going to dive into some of this with regard to accessibility and helping provide a more accessible learning experience for students using the tools that Google has to offer. But before we get into some of that, just something to be aware of. I know someone in my first session recognized this name and this quote. And one of the things that I personally really believe in when it comes to trying to make something accessible for everyone is the principles of UDL. And there were a couple of sessions on UDL this conference. I know Kim Vogie's actually doing one right now on UDL. So it's something that I think is really worthwhile and wonderful when it comes to thinking about how can we design instruction to be inclusive of all learners if we start at the beginning with the lessons that we're providing. Chromebooks and the Chrome and the docs, that's all tools that we have available to us in our toolbox. But if we're talking about accessibility within lesson design, that UDL, those principles are things that I think are really great to take into consideration when we're developing the things that our students are going to be interacting with in their learning process. So that's just a little front end add-on that I like to talk about, because when we think about the outcome, right, we always want to know where we're going to start somewhere. And with UDL is a good starting point. If you do know UDL, if that's something you're really well versed in, I was at a session with Google maybe a month ago, and there is a book called Anti-Racism in UDL. So if that is something that you are a pro at, there was a very enlightening discussion that we had about that. So there is a book, and it's called Anti-Racism within UDL, as something that maybe some of the work that we're trying to achieve, if that's something that your district is looking for with diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. Again, resources are going to be at that bit.ly link. So check it out. If you look at it now, it will say that there are activities. I tend to overplan. I'm an overplanner, so we probably won't get through the activities or get to the activities, just because I tend to try and go relatively quickly and answer any questions that you might have. So we're going to be talking about 3 things within the quote unquote Googleverse, right? We're going to talk specifically about items that Chromebooks have available to them. So features that a Chromebook has. We're going to talk about things that are available within the Chrome browser. And then we're going to talk about things that are available in Google Workspace for Education. There were some great questions yesterday about Google Workspace, like what is that? And Google Workspace is just the name. Back in February, they decided to rename Google's apps for education to Google Workspace for Education. That's all that is just Google Workspace is the new name for the G Suite products, essentially. So diving in, if you do take a look at this presentation on the website, it is available. And you can jump through it by clicking on the links that are within the slide deck. Some just general notes when we're doing things with links for students, according to, of course, now I can't remember who it's according to, but it is on the site. Website design, there's some specifics for website design and things that make things accessible. When you do use links, they should have 2 different variants within them. So they should have 2 different determinants. So this is a color and an underline that tells you that it is a link. This is hard because these are all links, so there's not something to differentiate between the 2, but you should have 2 things. Generally, when you hyperlink something, right, it changes to a teal blue, and then it has an underline on it. That's an actual requirement for some things that are made with, there it is. Thank you, Dave. I was like, it's web something. There it is. And they've got some really good information. There's some contrast checkers there and things like that. But just as a note on links. So Chromebooks, starting with Chromebooks. The features of a Chromebook vary depending on the age. So I will kind of just give you all of the options, and the best, just because I don't know what everyone has, with regard to Chromebooks exactly would be to check the actual settings that the Chromebooks have to see what is there. Newer ones generally have all of these. It was Chromebook's 10th birthday this year, so they unleashed all of these features. But there are a couple that I have noticed when I'm going into my students' Chromebooks that they don't have available. So I'll try and kind of delineate what some of those are, but I want to make sure I mention them in the event that if your district is like mine and purchased a ton of Chromebooks in the last year, that we talk about all of them. So this slide in particular is one that brings all of these things together. So all of these features together. I'm going to show you what they look like, but just know that this slide is here. One of my favorite things to share with parents in particular is the Chromebook Simulator. When you open this link, the Chromebook Simulator tells you how to get started, how to add an account, sign in as a guest, set it up. Some of these things our districts do for you, right? Usually when they sign in as a student, their account is there. But exploring some of those things, those touchpad pieces, we're going to talk about a lot of what's here, but just know that if you need something, a parent is like, I don't even know how to use this, send them the Chromebook Simulator. It'll give them a little bit of an idea of what's available and how to use them. That's something that we rely on quite a bit. But with regard to accessibility features, you can see them all there on the screen. One of the things, and some of them are a little bit more apparent as to what you would use them for. I do have a little anecdotal story about high contrast with regard to students who maybe you teach secondary, and we've had students who have benefited from changing the contrast on their device. There is like the option to do warm and cool, and some of those, that feature has even benefited our students who come back. Our football players, we had a kid who got a concussion, and obviously looking at a screen for an extended period of time is not the best case scenario. And so that changing the high contrast, even for something like that, if you have to use the device, is helpful. You'll see, we'll talk about some shortcuts. There is an entire list of keyboard shortcuts. It is so long. But in the chat, one of my favorite things to do is hear what your favorite shortcut is. So what is one of your favorite shortcuts that you use on a keyboard when you are using actually any device? I will sub Command Control if you are a Mac user. That's fine. I am a Mac user. But anyone have a favorite shortcuts? A Control V, a Control C? Ooh, yes, Control D is one of my favorites. Duplicate, duplicate, duplicate everywhere. Screenshots, Control Command 4. I love that one. Z to undo is one of my favorites as well. That's a good one. But as a classroom teacher, if you haven't seen Command or Control, Shift and T as in tab, Command Shift T will open up any past tabs. So I just hit it on mine, and it opens up any, it'll keep going. If you try it right now, you will open up any tabs you have already closed. So Command Shift T is one of my favorites, just because for teachers in the classroom, they're always wondering, what is my kid looking at? Or why are they laughing? What is so funny? And they come over, they close their screen really quickly, but now you can see what tabs they were looking at. So to continue on, I'm going to skip the Chromebox screen reader just for the sake of time. But this video is a walkthrough of what the Chromebox screen reader does. Maybe we just do the first 10 seconds.
The Chromebox screen reader is a Chromebook feature that reads aloud whatever text is on your screen. This is really helpful for low vision and blind students, but I also think this can be a great tool for struggling readers and kids who are learning English as their second language. Chromebox is built into Chromebooks, so let's take a look at how it works on docks in G Suite. If you're using a Chromebook, all you have to do is press Control-Alt-Z, and you can turn the feature on or off. Chromebox spoken feedback is ready. So if we
Okay, so you could hear that it told you Chromebox feedback is ready. That feature will read things that are on the screen. If you have a low vision student, that's really helpful. Again, like she mentioned, if you have early readers, if you have English language learners, all of those things are really great supports for the read aloud options. It is similar to how JAWS works. So if you are or have someone who's done assistive technology, it's similar to that. And it's already built into the device. So there's no additional software that has to be added onto it. Did I put that on there twice? Apparently I did. Okay, so this next one here that you're looking at is what is called select to speak. And so it is, instead of Chromebox Reader, which will read everything all the time, there is this option for select to speak. And select to speak is, you can make a box, that pink box, the students can drag around and it will read what is there for them. And you can see it also highlights as it would read. So it has the tracking box that moves while it's reading aloud. These options down here, students can speed it up. So you see it's at 1x speed right now. They can slow it down or speed it up. And if your district does have the Google Assistant option available, it will translate for you too, which is really cool. But this does read in a little bit of a robotic voice. You can make some changes to the voice, but you do have to kind of get further into the settings to make adjustments. But the cool thing about this is that the students control this. So if you needed students to read aloud on their device, and maybe you've written directions on a slide, they can select those directions, have those directions read aloud to them again, without you needing to do that. You can kind of coach students on how they could use this tool, which is really awesome, very cool for creating some autonomy within the classroom. The colored cursors is available. And Robin, so I'm going to show you where they live. But on a Chromebook in particular, this is going to live in the settings down in the bottom right corner. There's a wheel, and if you click settings, we're going to get into some of those. In browser, it doesn't exist, but in the settings wheel, Chromebox, and then that Chromebook Simulator will show you exactly where to go as well, how to turn those things on. But cursor color is something that can be helpful and fun. Just for vision, you have on a Chromebook as well, the option to highlight the mouse cursor when it's moving. And so if a student hasn't really used a device before, or they're having trouble with the trackpad, what it will do is it will highlight with a little red circle when it's moving. So the kids know where it is, they can track it a little bit easier. And so that's something that you can do in addition to making the cursor huge. That's also a choice. You can make it much larger within those things. And a lot of that we tried with some of our younger students just to be able to get them used to the fine motor that's required for some of that. And it turned out really nicely. Quick answers. So this one here, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna play it one more time and pause it just so you can see. What it does is it will, when highlighted, it will define a word and give you kind of the breakdown here. These dots here are something to be aware of. So this, while quick answers is really cool, if your district does not have Google Assistant enabled, Ours does not, so we don't have access to this feature. This is the little kind of Google Assistant logo that they use. So that's like Chromebook's version of Siri. If your district doesn't have it enabled, you won't have access to this. This is how it's used, or how they find it. So that is something that is very cool. I like it. Some of it you'll be able to find in other areas as well. So Robin, this is a great visual, just really quickly here. So where they went for settings for screen recordings, the settings is where you're going to go to access all these features on a Chromebook. But your Chromebook can screen record. It can do snapshot screenshots as well. What you see here, casting, when we're talking about, we'll get into it a little bit with Google Meets, but when we're talking about students presenting their screens to other students, I'll give you kind of a little hack for that, but casting is a way to do that as well. But you do have to have some initial setup. If you have a desktop, they can cast to your desktop and you can project your desktop. Unless you have they have like, they make a little dongle that you can add to your projector. But there's an even easier way of doing it that I'll talk about when we talk about Meets, just to kind of get that out there for you all. They can also screen record comments. So say you are having students give feedback to one another, and they screen record comments. They can screen record comments, and all the screen recordings get saved in their drive. So they can add those comments if they copy and paste the file into a comment for someone else. So then it's a recorded comment as opposed to a typed comment. I know Alice Keeler was here. She has been a strong proponent of screencasting comments from Screencastify. I love that idea. I saw her last year give that option, and this is just kind of another way of doing that as well, because you'll be able to pull from the drive. So let's see, desktops is another one. Let me pause here. Actually, let me go back here. Ooh. So desktops, if you're a Mac user, you've seen something like this before. Up along the top is what they're calling desktops. And you can actually get desktops from a Windows device as well, or a Lenovo ThinkPad, if that is what your district has. If you do a 3-finger swipe up, it will pop up a window that's very similar to this that shows desktops and all the windows you have open. And one of the things when we thought about in our district, how would we use this? And you see how on the screen it says, productivity, podcast, entertainment, furniture shopping, marketing. Why couldn't those be subjects? Why couldn't that be math, science, language, arts, history? Or why couldn't that be morning work, afternoon work? Where if a student is pulling up a bunch of items for research or opening windows, they could easily access them without having to close down everything. So that is a feature that we really liked. And desktops, along with a lot of the other things in a Chromebook, the trackpad does a lot of things in and of itself. And I did get a request to have these written down somewhere, so I will have to do that for you. But I'm going to tell you what all of your fingers do on a Chromebook. So on a Chromebook, one finger on a trackpad, one finger, it will guide your mouse where you want your mouse to go. So one finger will guide, is essentially tracking. 2 fingers is a right click and a swipe. So you can swipe between tabs on a Chromebook using a 2-finger, or it's a back button if you swipe. 3 fingers will go between tabs, right and left. And then it will bring up the shelf from the bottom. So if you do a 3-finger swipe from the bottom, you're going to get the little shelf that's going to bring up all the apps. And somebody said, Brittany, if a kid gets somewhere crazy, what's like an easy reset to get them back to where they need to go? It'll be a 3-finger swipe from the bottom. and the shelf will be the easiest way to get them back to where they're going. And then if you do a 4-finger swipe, because there are 4 fingers you can swipe with, if you are using desks, you can 4-finger slide back and forth between desks. So there's a lot that you can do navigating with just your fingers on a Chromebook, which is really cool, but it tends to get our students a little bit lost where they're going on some of the swiping right and left and clicks. So just know the shelf, a swipe up is going to be the easiest way to get them back to where they are, or where they need to be. So that is the Chromebook itself. Keeping in mind, a Chromebook is just a window to the internet. It's a laptop that the operating system is already Google Chrome. So if you're having trouble with Google Classroom, you shouldn't be, because it's already logged into all of those things when you are using Google Chrome. A lot of our students last year struggled a little bit because when they tried to log into something and they were using Safari, they were kicked out. That shouldn't be the case if you are using Google Classroom and you have a Chromebook. But the Chrome browser in and of itself, you can do a lot of these things. So the Chrome browser, when I'm talking about what is the Chrome browser, so I'm using a Mac computer right now, but I have Chrome installed on my computer. The default for a Mac computer is Safari, but I have Chrome, the Chrome browser. So the Chrome door to the internet is installed on my computer. And that is the browser that I am using to browse the internet. But you can make some adjustments to how your experience with the internet goes in the Chrome settings. So the Chrome settings are up in the top right corner. There's 3 dots there. And that is where a lot of what I'm going to be showing from this point forward lives. Some of these things in particular may not be available to your students, so they may just make your life easier. You may want to do some advocating for your students to get these things available. And that's talking with IT. I'm doing some of that right now for some of my kiddos in the district. But for appearance, you have some choices, right? Show custom home button. So you could make this your Google Classroom. You could make the home button here a Google Classroom, your Google Classroom page. The other options, of course, are always making it a bookmark. But if you wanted to make home your Google Classroom, you would put in classroom.google/h, and that's usually your home for Google Classroom. You can also adjust the font sizes. You can also zoom in on your pages, which is good for, actually, it'll just zoom all the way. I think it goes up to like 500. So Kate, I see, we do have different needs, exactly. The custom home for staff and scholars, but we're gonna try, I have a couple other things, a couple other ideas up my sleeve to try and help with some of that. With at least potentially maybe making bookmarks for them. That might be a choice, but I have some other ideas as well. And that is customizing your Chrome tabs. So I'm going to jump out of my presentation here, and customizing your Chrome tabs. What that means is your Chrome tab, right? That's the top. When we open a new tab, the plus sign, that's opening a new tab. You can customize this background image here. And one of the things that I tested out was uploading an image from a device. And so I have something on my computer that I'm going to upload. And it is a social story or a schedule. And this is just an image that I made that has the schedule along the left-hand side, and then a little bit of first, next, then last as a way of navigating where students need to go with regard to the shortcuts that they should be using. So maybe we can't make a new homepage, but you can add shortcuts. So if I say Google Classroom, and then type in the URL for my Google Classroom, it will put the shortcut there. And I can add and remove, oh, so I spelled Google wrong. I can add and remove those things as well. So if you have 3, then you only do 3. If you have more than that, that's also something you can do. And so there was a question about how would I get a student to do this if they needed it? And again, like Kate mentioned, we all have different needs. So how did I get here? Great question. So I just opened a new tab, and then down in the bottom right corner, there's a little edit pencil, and you should be able to edit that background because you can choose any of these really cool things. Artist collection, that's the one that I have that I really enjoy. So I'm going to bump it back to that. So that is something you can do. Changing your language. The changing of a language is something you can do on a Chromebook. The students can change the language. And again, how to do that, that is something that's on the Chromebook Simulator. So you can do that. And the way to change the language is, again, in settings. We're past appearance here, but we're going to scroll down to advanced. And we're going to add a language. And I'm going to add Spanish. And there's a ton of Spanish options there. I'm going to add it. I won't be able to show the translation because then I'd have to reboot my Chrome. But know that if you add a language, you're going to get a little icon up here. Once you restart Chrome, you're going to get a little icon up here that's going to give you the opportunity to translate pages that are able to be translated. Not all pages on the web are translatable, but the ones that are, it will be able to translate for you. One of the really cool things about it is that it will do Google Classroom. So like the Google Classroom overlay, if you have an English language learning student, so where you have the word topics, it would say topics in their native language. Where it says some of the stuff that you type in, maybe you have week 1, it would say semana uno in Spanish instead. It won't translate the assignments themselves, but it will translate those overlay pieces. Melissa's great question. Do you know if Canvas is translated? What I do know is that Canvas actually is Canvas translated with the overlay. That's a great question. I haven't tried it. I should try it because we have Canvas, because then the first thought I have is always Canvas has immersive reader embedded, so then it would translate the pages. But if you were talking about the overlay, I'd have to explore that. I can explore that. So yeah, that's a as an embed, or if you put that stuff on the page, it would definitely do it because on pages is where it will do immersive reader for sure in Canvas. So that is a great resource. So changing your language on the device. Live captions. So you might have seen down near the bottom when I started playing one of the other videos that I had a little pop-up box. And let me just go back to that slide to show you. So that's not the slide. Just to show you the pop-up live captions that I'm talking about. Because one of the cool things about being able to turn on live captions is, say, for example, you've added audio to a slide, but your student needs to be able to read it as well, or you want them to be able to read it. It will populate those live captions for you. So let's see if I can replicate it here.
The Chromebox screen reader is a Chromebook feature that.
So you see how down at the bottom, I have technically 3 sets of captions happening right now. There's the captions on the video, and then there was the pop-up bubble that was down here. That is live captions. So that is something, it will do any sort of audio that is embedded on a slide. or a video, or if there's something playing on a website, it pops up on, I have that feature turned on. I use it when I'm at work sometimes. If I'm on a break and I'm scrolling through Twitter to check out what my PLN is doing, some of those videos will pop up and it will start playing the captions for me. So I don't have to turn the audio on and disturb my colleagues. So live captions is something that is really awesome. And you can find that in the settings as well. I will say, because it is something that I am trying to work on for my students in my district, it does matter the age of the device for this thing in particular. So if they're newer, it should have this option available. I believe if it's 3 years or older, it may not have that option available. Quick highlight is another cool one that as when I taught elementary, I really would have loved to have. I'll show you really quickly what it does. It will put this nice little glowy white box around what you are working on. So I like to use it for videos because it will show where I'm clicking. I don't know if anybody else has had this problem, but I know when I do Screencastify, for whatever reason, my mouse like lags a ton and it looks like I'm clicking on things that I'm not clicking on. But that quick highlight is a great option. And it will do that for students as well. So they know where they're clicking when they are clicking on something. So I do like to use that one as well. Okay, I don't know how many of you are, I tend to have, this is the nicest any of my tabs have been in a very long time. This is the fewest number of tabs I have had in a very long time. I usually have thousands of tabs open. Mostly because I'm afraid to have to go look for something. And I know I already had it open. Where was I when I was looking for that? Open a new tab, let's go. If you haven't seen grouping and labeling tabs, I'm sure someone in this conference has shown this to you, but if they haven't, add a tab to a new group. And I'm gonna name this group RCOE. And then I'm gonna add this tab to that group of RCOE. So I like to do, I'll do like email stuff or Google stuff or other stuff. Usually that's what they're actually called. And it will collapse all of them into that one group. So you don't have to see all of your tabs, especially after the great suspender happens. That was a very interesting time to have a lot of different tabs. And so this is something that you can use. You can make them beautiful. You can move it all to a new window. I know that's been really helpful for me in the past. So just know that that's something that's there. All right, so the Google Apps for Education, Google Workspace for Education. I mentioned Google Meet before. One of the things that's coming for some, but not all, and this is where I'm very frustrated personally. Right now it's for some, but not all. But just because of the levels of tiers that Google is doing for Google for Education, Google Meet will in the future be able to translate captions. So if you have a Spanish speaking parent, it will translate your captions to Spanish for them on their end. There is a hack to do this right now, but it has to do with instructing someone how to change the language on their device. In the future, it is going to be like a native thing where I'm speaking English, my captions will be translated to Spanish. They will speak Spanish and it will translate to English for me. So it's a great way of establishing communication between schools and parents. But right now it's behind a paywall within Google. So the hope is that they realize that it brings people together more so. The other thing for Google Meet, when we're talking about students presenting their screen, this is an easy way to do it. Just pop up a Google Meet and have them mute and then present their screen, and they can present from their desk if that is still something that your districts are working with. or if you are virtual, again, we opened a virtual school this year, so we're hoping that that feature is going to be something that is very usable, even for when you return to the classroom, because then you can just be presenting your computer screen, as you probably already do, and then the student would just take over presenting and be able to control their presentation from their desk or wherever they're presenting from. So Google Docs, a couple things that are in here that I think are worth mentioning if you haven't seen them before. One of the tools that's in here is voice typing. Students can use their voice to type if they need to, if they don't have motor skills, or if they are younger students, they can use their voice to type and answer questions in a Google Doc, and then copy and paste if they need to, or go back and take a look at the grammar, because it will not do the grammar for you. And oh, I love that, Dana. They've used to create closed captions for videos that aren't captioned. That's awesome. So yes, and one of the strategies that our students actually found while they were doing virtual was they actually did this themselves on a Google Doc and used this as notes. They referred back to it. So the teacher was giving the lecture, the student just turned on their microphone and it took note of everything that the teacher was saying, and then they use those as notes. That was a cool hack that some of our Roosevelt students figured out. And then they went back and kind of reviewed what they needed to, took out what they didn't, and things like, they are so smart. I've got some other funky things they've been doing too that are smart, but are frustrating too. So if you're a teacher, I'll share it. If you're a teacher of a secondary class, and you allow your students to listen to music while they're testing or doing something like that. I know some of our teachers were doing that. If you're doing independent work, that's fine. What they did, they're so smart, is they voice memoed the answers to things on tests. So they recorded like a study guide. They said, Abraham Lincoln was born in this year. And they listened to it while they were taking the test. And I just said, wow, that's like so resourceful and that's so smart, but it's so frustrating because you want to be able to do something nice where it's like, yes, you can listen to music while you're working if that helps you focus. But it turned out it was not music they were listening to. So yeah. And okay, so we talked about voice typing. There's some accessibility settings in here, but they are very specific to Braille and Braille notes. If you have a student with a Braille note, their TVI will know all about that. But I do want to share, because it warms my teacher heart, my to-do list checker. If you haven't seen Checklist yet, it's amazing because it's interactive. So you don't have to make a box or a bullet anymore. You can make it it's an interactive checklist. You can just keep going and the students can check off what they've done. So even if you made a checklist for students, first, next, then last, have you done it? And they can actually check it off. You would be able to see it. It speaks so deeply to my heart that I've been sharing it with as many people as I possibly can. So that is a choice. You can actually also type in another language. There is a way to do that down here as well. Just so we know that that is there. There's a couple languages that aren't supported, but that is something that is available as well. One hack, if you haven't heard, is to say maybe you're making a new syllabus, or you're making a new PIN presentation, or you're doing a new, that's something that you do every year. Just use your version history and name it, and don't have a million different docs available. That's just another little hack. Because when you go in, you can always revert back to whatever it was that you were doing. So make the changes on the same one. Make one syllabus, title it 2021, 2022 as a choice as well. So let's see if there's any other quick hacks. Google Slides. I'm sure in one of the sessions, hopefully someone mentioned adding audio to your slides. And you can actually use voice to type for dictation on slides as well. So there is a way to turn on speech to text on a Chromebook, and then the kids can actually type into slides that way as well. Or if you're more comfortable, you can have them voice type, copy paste onto the slides. That would work too. The drive bonus, and maybe this is part of the question or the comment about the adding the captions. You can always add captions to your drive videos too. That is something that's available to you in Google Drive. Robin's question, to add sound, do you need a link? You do need a link to the file in your Google Drive, and you do need to make sure that that link is shared with so that anyone can view. I know we're not viewing audio necessarily, but that permission does need to be turned on, because if someone can't hear it, it's likely that you haven't shared it. So just as a note for the audio in a slide deck. And voice typing it in slides puts it in speaker notes. Yep, I love that. I have speaker notes open now. I should record myself for that. YouTube, I'm going to make this the last thing that I show you, just because it tends to be one of the things that people are like, yes, and then show me again. So if you don't or haven't seen it's a little teeny tiny hack. It's a little baby hack. That is something you can use. Let's see. I'll go back to my instrumental pop here.
Don't you just love it when a solution costs you a pretty penny and then you have to...
No, I don't. So there you can see live captions again. And so what I'm going to do is this is something maybe I want to share with my students, but I see lots of visual clutter over here. Plus it has ads, which is not something we want. We can't be advertising to students. So what I'm going to do to get rid of all of that mess, I'm going to go up to the URL, and I'm going to put a dash between the T and the U. So YouTube, so ube, down at the, put a dash, not an underscore, but a dash. And then I'm going to hit return. And what will happen is it'll change your link to this. But if you see what's happened here, it's taken all of that extra visual stuff off the screen. And it is just the video. That's all I want. That's what I want the kids to focus on. So I can take all of that visual clutter away. It does also, yes, strip ads, because we've got the nocookie.com. So that is what you want. No cookies are good cookies. So yes, it does do that. The other feature that's in here, if you need it, this is a horrible example because there's no words here. But there are captions available. Yep, repeat, please. You bet it. Here we go. And that's why I want to make sure it's the last thing I show you. So in the URL at the top, don't go to share, don't do that. Go to the video you want, go to the URL at the top, and put a hyphen between the T and the U, and then just hit return. And that's going to take you to what you want. So it'll change the link up here, but when you change the link, you're going to put the T and the U. And if your colleagues haven't seen this yet, they're going to be like, how did you even do that? Yes, between the T and the U and YouTube. Exactly. Exactly. So with that being said, I will wrap up because I know that I am the last session of the day and you're all have been wonderful. I'm so glad that you were able to attend. Hopefully you've got a little nugget of something. I know sometimes with conferences, we tend to get really overwhelmed with all of the information that we learn. So hopefully you've got a couple of tricks to make something accessible for your students, some ideas for what you could do, and all that jazz. If you ever have questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. You can find, I think all of my stuff's on the sched, the email's there, just email me. You can put me on Twitter, whatever you want, whatever's easiest for you. You're so welcome, Dana. And thank you so much, Melissa, as well. So you're so welcome. You are so welcome. Let's see, we've got a whole bunch of other things in here. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about that stuff. You can take a look at it later if you're interested. And it's always on the RCOE link, that bit.ly link for you. So you'll be able to access it there. But with that being said, you're so welcome. I am going to stop share here. And I'm going to hop off because it is 2 o'clock and hopefully you all enjoy your summer. I'm going to get back to mine. And again, if you have any questions about anything, I'm available via email, brittany.conrad@cnusd.k12.ca.us, on Twitter @missconrad.edu. So yeah.
Brittany, I'm going to be closing the session now.
All right. Christy is going to close.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.